Jai Shri Krishna to all. Welcome to Path to Anandam Gita series. Freedom from pains and miseries to happy, healthy and peaceful life. Based on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, my question and God's answers, and 108 mantras to awaken your soul. Pranam to Hariharji Maharaj. A special pranam to him today because right now it is his 126th birthday celebration going on in Jodhpur, Gita Dham, and his blessings for guiding, founding the Path to Anandam non-profit organization, bringing us all together and blessing us with Gita's wisdom, good health, and happiness. Today's subject, how to make mind your best friend and not worst enemy. We all have those experiences, and I think this is a very appropriate subject. Now the question comes for ourselves. Is my mind my best friend or worst enemy? Who is my best friend? Who is my worst enemy? And this is based on Gita verse chapter 6, 5 and 6. Dhyan Yoga. That's what chapter 6 is known for. Dhyan Yoga, self-discipline yoga. We will be covering, is my mind friend or enemy? And how to make my mind my best friend? And what am I going to get out of putting all the efforts? And how can I practice it? And our sankalpa, my mind, this Jiva Atma is my best friend. And we will follow with meditation and question and answers. So starting with the same dilemma of Arjuna. Why do I have to get engaged in this sinful war? Why cannot I go to Himalayas and do meditation? Basically, how can I not have a simple life rather than facing this world turmoil, daily challenges for us? And then he says, Na Jyotasiti Govindam. My dear friend, Keshav, please allow me to run away because I'm confused. I cannot handle this. And I do not know what my duty is at this point. Therefore, I ask you, give me the solution to my problem. And what is my problem? I don't know what to do and what not to do. So let's all, as a Arjuna, seek Lord Krishna's guidance with humbleness and surrender to him. Karpanya dosho pehte svabhava pasyami tvam dharma sammood cheta yachreyasyani nishchitam bruyatan me shishyasteham shati mam tvam prapanyam Shishyasteham shati mam tvam prapanyam. My heart is overpowered by weakness of my mind. I am feeling very pity about myself. I have lost my composure. My mind is very confused about my duty, my dharma, what to do, what not to do. So I am requesting you, please tell me what is definitely good for me. Then I should do it. I surrender to you. I'm your disciple. I become your disciple now. From friend to now, I'm asking, considering you as my guru. Please guide me. Similarly, when Arjuna was in Vishad, and we are in Vishad, due to some fear, confusion like Arjuna, losing family members, killing near and dear ones, attachment, worries. That was his Vishad. And then he said, Na jotasiti gobindam, due to attachment, due to his ego. And he asked Lord Krishna's advice. After analyzing himself, that he cannot perform his dharma, his duty anymore. And Lord Krishna blessed him with prasad, where Arjuna received that prasad gracefully and said, Karishye vachanam tav, I will do as you advise. So let's all go on this blissful journey for our own self-purification, transform ourselves, uplift ourselves, and ultimately experience who am I? Sat Chit Ananda. So here Lord Krishna's guidance and advice. We are still the first section of Bhagavad Gita. We just completed chapter until 5, Karma Yoga. Gyan Karma Sannyas Yoga. Karma Sannyas Yoga, how to perform our duty. However, with the proper status of mind, we cannot perform our karma. So here comes now the chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, self-discipline yoga, where Lord Krishna takes another confusion, another layer of Arjuna's confusion like an onion, and continue to take him to the essence of Sat Chit Anand, ultimately where he can feel the Anandam. So we are at the first part of Karma Yoga, going little by little upward, uplifting ourselves. And now we are on the Dhyana Yoga. And of course, here Gyan Karma. So Gyan comes from very beginning. Love and compassion comes from very beginning. So it's not that Bhagavad Gita is only first 6 chapter is Karma Yoga, and then next one is Bhakti Yoga, and then Gyan Yoga. It's for our understanding. However, anything we do, Karma Yoga cannot be done without bhakti, without love and compassion, and without wisdom. As I said before, Karma Yoga, what is Karma Yoga? Action done for Sarva Bhutite Rata, for the benefit of all, with love and compassion, with wisdom. Then we can perform Karma Yoga, but it must be done selflessly for the benefit of all, not just for myself. So Lord Krishna actually end of chapter 5th had summarized the whole chapter 6. In chapter 5th, at the end, he says, Prashant kratva bhair bayam, chakshucha antre bhurma, prana pan samoy kratva, nasabbe antar charno, jatendriya, buddhi, mano, buddhi, muni, moksh parayana, vigat ichha bhai krodha, sasada yukt evsa, sasada mukt evsa. Where he says, one certainly liberates himself and attains liberation by renouncing all sense enjoyments, fixing the eyes and vision in between two eyebrows, regulating inward and outward breath, prana, apana, maintaining senses, mind, and intellect under control. Here comes maintaining senses, mind, and intellect under control. Having self-realization, moksha as the supreme goal of our life. Then we can become free from desires, fear, and anger. Understand, our body is made with senses, mind, intellect, and supreme power, spirit, Atma. However, our mind, which is in the middle, is controlled by our senses. But intellect guides the mind because mind has nothing his own. And the intellect is guided by supreme power. This comes from verse chapter 3, 42 and 43. Once we know this, that the supreme power is the highest, we must learn the technique to listen to the voice of the Atma rather than being controlled by senses. That's where it says regulating, maintaining the control on the senses. Pranayam, meditation. So it's all summarized here, where we will be expanding now on chapter 6. And actually in chapter 6 in the beginning, again, Lord Krishna explains that karma yogi is not the one who just free himself from all the karmas, or who just renunciates doing havans and giving the bhutis to Agni and all that. But true karma yogi is the one who does everything for the benefit of all without his selfish motives. So until now, Lord Krishna has been explaining about karma yoga, how to do the karma yoga. But here he comes and he explains, because Arjuna is still confused. He is still saying, Na jotasiti govindam. His mind is still filled with vishad. Even though Lord Krishna took him to the 2 steps. First, he tried to tell him, you are body, you are not the body, you are the Atma. Arjuna did not understand. Then he tells him, do the karma yoga, because he thought Arjuna will understand the language of karma. Kshatriya, because he's a Kshatriya, he does the karma all the time. He is still confused because his mind is so disturbed by looking his relatives there. And then Lord Krishna gives him more wisdom that why he's confused. Because his mind is right now acting like an enemy, not his friend. So he tells him, Uddher Atma Atmanam, na Atmanem Vasadet. Atma hivi Atma Bandur. Atma Ripur Atmana. Bandur Atmana Tasya. Yen Atmanev Jit. Anatmanastu shatrute, vartet atme shatruvat, which means Udher Atma Atmanam. One must lift himself by himself and not degrade himself. Why? Because one's mind is himself, where it's actually here we see the Atma. And in Bhagavad Gita, Atma is referred in many different ways. One, we all know that Atma means soul. But it's not just the Atma, it's the Jiva Atma. Here is the Lord Krishna is referring to the Jiva Atma and mainly on the mind. He says, is the friend, Bandhur, or it is also could be Ripu. Ripu means enemy. So it is our friend or it could be our enemy. But whose is this friend for? Friend is the one who has the control over his mind and the one who operates based on the enmity, shatruta, within himself, herself. That person himself is the shatru. So who is our biggest enemy? Ourself. Why? Because whatever we think, Udher Atma Atmanem, Bandhur Atne, Bandhur, who is Bandhu? But before we understand, we have to understand what is the function of the thoughts. If we recall, that it goes before that, which Dhyayato Vishan Punsa Sangasteshu Pujayate Sanga Sanjayate Kama. Kama Krodho Vijayate. Krodha Bhavati Sammoha. Sammoha Smriti Vibhrama. Smriti Branshad Buddhi Nasha Pranshati. When Buddhi is nashed, that's where our mind becomes enemy. Why? Because the thoughts lead to our speech, our action, our habits, our destiny, and that becomes the cause of our bondage or liberation. So, if my mind is my friend, I could be liberated. But if it is enemy, like Arjun, he was so confused. He was about to run away, performing his duty. So it all starts with one's mind. So our mind is friend or enemy. That we really have to focus on it, whether in our mind is sitting in this Rakshas or is this sitting the divinity within us. But before we get into further, we have to understand what is mind. Though it says, and I explained before in chapter 3, verse 42 and 43, mind is right in the middle. But what is mind? See, since mind is in the middle, it is controlled by the senses, but it is directed by the buddhi, and buddhi is directed by the Atma. But so mind is nothing but a bundle of thoughts. It keeps brewing, whatever it is in the mind, we keep brewing like a slow cooker. Think about the same thing, good or bad thing, but most of the time we think more negativity over there. So it is nothing but it's a memory bank of old sanskaras. It is a master of senses and human being. And it is the medium to connect the body and the soul. So mind is right in the middle. That's why you hear a lot of sessions, body, mind, and soul, oneness of body, mind, and soul, where the soul supersedes. So very restless, turbulent, powerful, stubborn, and hard to control. It's a monkey mind. That's what Arjun says. Lord Krishna says, you control your mind. And Arjun says, how could I control? It's the monkey mind. It's just like a wind. You cannot control it. So, but we should understand that the mind itself has three parts. One is a conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. Here is the mind. Here is the conscious mind, whatever we are speaking right now, whatever you are listening, this is what the function of the conscious mind. See, the messages are going here to conscious mind. And then they are sitting in the conscious mind, because conscious mind leads to the subconscious mind. This is the storage. This is where this is where the storage of the mind is. That's where we have our previous sanskaras, our old memories, whatever happened to us, previous lives, this life, old life. And you will experience this more, like now you are listening, but later on, when you start reflecting what we just discussing right now, is that goes into subconscious mind. But the subconscious mind makes the one person's personality. It's always live. Conscious mind, when we finish talking, after this, it will be gone. But subconscious mind is always active. Even when we go to sleep, it is always active. That's where we have the dreams. We all of a sudden get some of the auto responses. This is all the function of the subconscious mind. But the supreme conscious has control over both. And that's where we will be discussing more on the superconscious mind. How can we train our superconscious mind to cleanse our subconscious mind, self-purification? But before we go into that, what happens to our mind, our thoughts, our action? What do they do to our brain and our mind? So every action and thoughts have everlasting effect on our brain. I bring some scientific facts, some medical facts. Being myself as a medical scientist, I just cannot bypass these things. So anything and everything we do, we think, we see, we hear, all have an everlasting effect on our brain, which is called the neurotransmitters, neuroreceptors, which you see is all this jal, this web. This is all the nervous system in our body. It's the master right here, controlled here. So when we do the good things, it strengthens our neuroreceptors. And they communicate, all these neuroreceptors communicate with each other, and that's how our mind functions. But when we have a negative impact, then they get disconnected. And they cannot communicate. For example, when we are angry, our neuroreceptors get disconnected. We don't even remember what we said or what was not supposed to be said. And later on, we regret because these receptors get disconnected with each other. And we lose the impact. Many times we say, a question comes that all this is so good. When we're talking about it, we are so calm. We are so enjoying this session. But then what happens when we get out of the session and something unlikable happens to us, and all of a sudden we feel upset because our neuroreceptors, these messages start disconnecting with each other. And when we are very upset, and when we live in that consciousness of always angry, upset, these receptors do not communicate. That becomes so weak. And eventually we say, my memory is getting lost. When we are angry, we don't remember. So this is a good example that at that time, our neurons, our receptors have got disconnections. And that's why we don't remember. This is the physiology of the mind. You can see it here is the brain, the front and the back. These all are, each part is responsible for our different function of the mind. But when we are in harmony, then our happy hormones as dopamine, endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin, we have spoken about this several times before. So I'm just reminding each one of you that those happy hormones released in our system is to strengthen our neuroreceptors and our memory. Doesn't matter whether we are old or young. we still have a good memory. But if we have a negativity, too much stress in our life, too much criticism, then we have a lot of cortisol, ACTH. All these prevent us to remember, and they lead us to disconnection of our receptors from each other. They cannot communicate with each other, and that's why we do not remember the things. So what makes our mind enemy? Disturbed mind makes our mind enemy. But how? As I mentioned, the Dhyayato Vishyan Punsa, this is a most one should remember this verse, chapter 2, 62, 63, to remind ourselves that what are the problems in our life could cause us to bondage. And what are those? Like our selfishness, our anger, our fear, our worries. When we think about negativity, our negative hormones are released as cortisol, causes the diseases. We have all these issues when think about these problems in our lives, which could be relationships, which financials, whatever it is, or worldly desires, or attachments, fear, jealousy, stress, diseases. All these are caused by our confusion, our enemy mind. When our mind is enemy, when we have negativity in our mind, then what happens? We are stressed. Our mind is full with this. I put it, this is my favorite one, like a Rakshas, my mind is being eaten up by, taken up by this devil. So these negative thoughts ultimately gives us the stress, and see what happens. All this. So these are the symptoms of the disturbed mind, which I had shared it before, but I just want to remind you, due to stress, toxins in the body. Arjuna had so much stress. He got Vishad, means what? Wish, toxins in his system. He could not even stand anymore. His body was shivering. He had to sit down on the back of the charioteer. Similarly, when we are upset and stressful, not only we lose our memory, but our attitude is negative. Our system is so weak. We are so prone to get the diseases like high blood pressure, cancer, immune deficiency diseases, because our immunity goes down. And then we are unhappy, disturbed mind, disturbed life, no peace. Why? Because our mind is our enemy, not our friend. And here, what happens when we are peaceful? Mind is in our hands. We control our mind. We are the master of our mind. And then look at how peaceful we are. Our mind is filled with all the good thoughts, but we are balanced. Our heart is filled with love and compassion. But there are some spiritual practices need to be done. That's why I put it here, the meditation, and we will talk about further on this one. But now question is how to make our mind as friend. Control mind and senses. Here Lord Krishna says again, he says, restless senses forcefully carry away the mind of even a wise person who is practicing self-control and striving for self-realization. So even the person is trying one's best, but the mind is the one which comes in the way. And because mind is controlled by all the senses. So one should focus his mind on me. Now he's giving us some tips here. All these issues are there. But when you start living in my consciousness, put God in your mind, in your heart, Bhagavad Gita in your heart, in your mind, then the senses will be controlled. We will start practicing our goodness, sattvic life, not a tamasic and rajasic life, and then live in God's consciousness. The key here is live in my consciousness. Dhyayato, whatever we put our dhyan, that's where I put it here. Think good. When we think good, we start seeing good in others, ourselves. We start hearing good because our thoughts is good. It says garbage in, garbage out. So when our thoughts are good, our speech is good, our hearing is good. We do not entertain the gossip. We speak nice words to others, and we do good things. So all starts in mind. Here in summary, do spiritual practices to control our mind. Discipline our mind. I say more like a disciplining rather than controlling the mind, because it might have a negative connotation to it. And this is how we can make our mind our friend. As I mentioned in chapter 5, last 2 verses, that's also a summary of Patanjali's yoga, because it talks about the body, where Patanjali Yoga talks about yama, niyama, asana, all body related. Yama, niyama, what are yama, niyama? How to live in this world, how to self-discipline, do's and don'ts. All this is given in chapter 3 to 5. And now, summary of this is also given, and how to focus on our mind with pranayam, with Om mantra, meditation. There are many other ways like chakras, energizing, which we spoke about previously, affirmations, prayers, and connection with soul. And finally, the samadhi. So the yogas, pranayam, meditation, Om mantra, all these are required to cleanse our subconscious mind, because subconscious mind is the one which has a lot of garbage in it. How can we cleanse it? How can we substitute all the previous sanskaras with a new message through conscious mind, living in his consciousness? So how to transform our mind? We talk about Bhagavad Gita. We talk about Patanjali's yoga. But my favorite one is also Bulle Shah. He says very simply, because one time somebody came to him and asked him that my mind is disturbed. How can I discipline my mind? How can I be more peace rather than disturbed? And he simply said, kuch nahi karna, itho putna te utthe lagana. What he meant, I had to think about a lot, and I had to do a lot of research on that. And finally it came to this, what he meant, itho putna. Where to putna? Putna means this is a left brain, which stores a lot of our relates to the subconscious mind, which is very selfish, very logical mind, which mainly is responsible for our tamasic and rajasic behavior, very passionate, very selfishness. And he's saying, itho putna, itho jana, go to this green area, which is a sattvic mind, which is a right brain, which is just more, has the more calmness, the service. So basically self-discipline and self-transformation. Finally, that's what he meant here. So when we are more focused on the left brain, that's where the miseries and unhappiness come. But when we are in the sattvic mind, this is where the more Anandam comes. So simply, मन की लगाम को लगा दो, हो गया भजन. आदत बुरी सुधार लो, हो गया भजन. Here is the मन को लगाम लगा दो. How? All this negativity, all these filthy things in our mind, we just have to retrain our mind, right? With positivity, with good actions, with sattvic behavior, living in the consciousness of supreme power. Then we can experience ultimate freedom and peaceful mind. So basically, we have to reprogram our mind here. And this comes the practice. Without the practice, Bhagavad Gita, we can talk about it, but unless we practice and we bring it in our life and experience, it's all bookish knowledge, borrowed knowledge. To make that borrowed knowledge, mere apna gyan, make that knowledge your knowledge, we have to practice. And here the practices are, I put it there in the morning. First thing we get up, whether we read Bhagavad Gita, some good statements, somebody's autography, biography. But my favorite one is start with Om Mantra. And then do the practice of yoga. Nothing more, just do the Surya Namaskar, pranayam, meditation. I call it a 60-minute program, but it could be only 15 minutes. You can just do it 5 minutes if we don't have much time. Once we start doing, during the day, we should take a one point. Which habit of mine is making my mind enemy? Then we should focus on whether my thinking is wrong, or my thinking needs improvement, or my judgment needs improvement, or my hearing needs improvement, or my action, whatever, or my speaking skills need improvement. Take a one point, focus on it. With the same time, live in the consciousness of supreme power. And once we do that, we sit for meditation, then our mind becomes our friend. So we become the master of our mind and our senses. And then finally, in the evening, we practice here meditation and then let go. As Lord Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Paritraje Mamekam Sharanam Braj Aham Tvam Sarpapebhyo Mokshashyami Ma Shuche. So you come to me, I will take care of it. Here God says, you just live in my consciousness. Give me the reign of your problems, your life. I will take you. Main tumhara beda paar kar dunga, like as I did it to Arjun. So we just have to practice this, and then we experience ultimate happiness, peace, Anandam. And that's what the purpose of life is, to experience. I am Satchitananda. Who am I? I am Satchitananda. So the time for homework. Ask that question all the time. Swadhyaya Abhyasnam. Self-awareness, self-inquiry. We have to live in self-awareness and ask the question, is my mind my friend or enemy? But we must live in awareness and ask, what are my vices? Make a list as I repeat over and over. What are those my 5 + 2 enemies? Kam, krodh, loh, moh, ankar, jealousy, resentment. Which one are superseding my body, my mind? And then what do I think most of the time? Do I mentally complaining? Sometimes we are not complaining, but inside we are burning, we are complaining, we are kind of fighting with someone, arguing with someone. And that comes in our behavior. This is where the mind is Shatru. Shatru does not mean that it's fighting all the time, but internally we are brewing on something which we did not like, disturbing our mind, our peace. So ask a question, do I make my best use of my senses, my mind? Do I practice Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga? Do I do yoga? What are my thoughts? Right here, I put the negative thoughts. Focus on it. Which one? Am I angry? Am I criticizing? Am I fearful? If we entertain this more, live in that negative thoughts, then as I mentioned, our physical mind, brain, also neuroreceptors get disturbed. Our memory is lost. We have insomnia, cannot sleep at night because our mind is disturbed. Our brain is disturbed. Our nervous system is disturbed. So we must make sure we ask these questions. That do I practice spirituality? Do I focus on self-transformation? So asking question is not a self-doubting, but this is for our self-improvement, because self-inquiry is the only path for self-improvement and reach higher self. Then we can become gunatit, we can go beyond tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic, and beyond sattvic, we can become gunatit and experience who I am. So our sankalpa, we have many sankalpas, and these sankalpas are not for the worldly desires, but this sankalpa is for self-disciplining my mind. Once we discipline our mind, as Dalai Lama also said, a disciplined mind leads to happiness, and an undisciplined mind leads to suffering, means it becomes your enemy. So in order for us to become happy, healthy, and peaceful, we must discipline our mind. And as I said, it is a gradual process. Sanai shanai uttar med buddhya buddhi grahita. It's a very gradual process. So we must have a patience for it and continue our practices. So thank you very much for attending the session, how to make mind your best friend and not enemy, and experience ultimate freedom from pains and miseries, and happiness, healthy and peaceful life. I am Satchit Ananda.